Welcome to another Human First AI Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Avenue 9. You can find us at avenue9.com. My guest this week is Alexandra Gonzalez from Savvy Marketers. You can find them at savvy-marketers.com. And she is an amazing market research person with over 25 years of experience. We got the Harvard MBA. We got the certificates from Stanford. You're doing crazy research into human psychology, behavior, sentiment analysis, and biometrics. So I would love to just start the podcast by asking you about the human side of market research. I think we get so wrapped up in data sometimes we forget that that data that represents a human who enjoyed the post or something, right?
That's absolutely right. And thank you so much, Mike, for the opportunity. And I'm very excited to be here. And back in 2017, we were doing a lot of market research. And as a marketer, market research is part of our day-to-day lives. Why? Because you really want to understand your consumer, who's the right target audience, what do they like, dislike, what are the pain points, etc. But one of the things that I really wanted to challenge ourselves was to really understand the whys at a deeper level. And that's where AI came to fruition for us. Imagine 2017, where we started to really understand that from a neuroscience standpoint, and we learned this at MIT, that 53% of the things that your emotions come from facial expressions, and over 38% of your emotions come from the tone of voice, how your words are said. And only 7%, Mike, come from your actual words, meaning if you're taking what people say literally, it only means 7% of what they actually really feel. So I felt that we were missing that 93%. The why. Do they like it, but do they really, really like it? Are they interested in buying it? When they watch that ad, how do they feel about it? And our technology, it's a proprietary way to really look at facial expressions, eye tracking, and the tone of voice to really uncover people's emotions. And I'm not only talking about sentiments, right? Because of course, biometrics has great technology from eye tracking and facial expressions, but it's also really looking at the level of engagement. We live in an era of experience. Everybody wants to experience something, right? How do we ensure that whatever campaign we're putting in place has the right engagement? You want campaigns to go viral for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons, right? So if you want something to really make its mark and make a difference in terms of engagement, you have to look at engagement at a positive level. I could be talking about politics or any other topic and be very engaged talking about it, but I may be engaged for the wrong reasons. So as marketers, we always tell people, you have to be very mindful of the sentiments that you're really trying to uncover, because once you know, it really helps you pinpoint what is the right messaging that you should go forward. And that saves a lot of companies thousands, if not millions of dollars to really get the right messaging out there. And that's what we're here to do, help enable them. But we say that it's a human connection because we can't just think of consumers as a percentage or a number or talking in general terms. We have to humanize them. Why? Because they have day-to-day lives, they have aspirations, they have dreams, they have feelings, they have concerns, things that keep them awake at night. So how do we make their lives easier, better?
That's exactly why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because you've already hit like three things that I am passionate about. I did a lot of sales training and people would say things all the time like 78% of people don't want to talk to a salesperson. And we go, great, send them all to the website. But what about the 22% of people that do want to talk to a salesperson? Who's going to talk to them? Like if you automate the whole process, no business wants to go down by 22%. Right. And I love what you said about sentiment. What we really want is affinity. I've had that experience too. It's funny where I'm located in the country. Kansas City is on the border of Missouri and Kansas, and their college teams are big rivals. And one of the basketball players from Kansas got arrested, and I clicked on the story like, ooh, let me see. This is juicy gossip, because I went to Missouri. And then Google started serving up all these Kansas basketball stories. And I'm like, no, I don't want this. That was a hate click. Like, don't you understand between a like click and a hate click? And it didn't at the time. Now, that was quite a few years ago because I've been using that story for a while. But it's such an interesting aspect. And then the one I wanted to ask you about was really where you think AI and biometrics is at this point, because a lot of people say, well, AI can't read emotion or express emotion or understand emotion. And I am torn because I obviously have this human first message that you just shared about connecting with people emotionally. But also, there are humans and human marketers and salespeople that are not great at reading the room. So if you kind of had to compare the strengths and weaknesses of the AI versus a human in reading sentiment, how would you rank them as of 2025?
That's an excellent question, Mike, because as a matter of fact, that's why we call it neuroscience, because you really need to understand the human behavior, right? For example, sometimes the ad agency gives the marketing team, hey, we've got this great campaign. We really feel very good about it. You see it and you're like, yes, this is awesome. All of a sudden, you show it and you may get some responses, but are people really telling you the truth? And sometimes it's very hard to read the room. And sometimes people, they just go, okay, let me just go with this campaign. It's telling it in my gut, right? So if you think about 5-6 years ago, Pepsi went with a campaign. And at that time, it was all about Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter. And they wanted to go with this campaign. It had great photography. It had great visuals, great music. Kylie Jenner was on it. They had a very diverse team. And she goes in the middle of a protest, and then she gives the cup, her Pepsi, a Pepsi. Like everything is going to be fine. Guess what? People did like the music. People liked some of the elements into the story, but to think that the brand Pepsi is going to solve the problem, it's not. And what happened? It went viral. It was considered the worst campaign of all time. They had to fire agency. They had to fire half of the marketing team because they went viral for the wrong reasons. So that's why sometimes you feel, hey, maybe this is the right thing. This is what people are thinking. Well, maybe not. So to save them money from what it took them to then stop that campaign, track back their message, and then kind of go back and apologize to people, to consumers. Think about Coors Light, what they did a year and a half ago. Same thing. Look, the team wanted to bring empathy, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They thought about bringing this influencer, all about, becoming, it was her first anniversary after transitioning. Guess what? That's what you wanted as a marketer, but did you ask your consumer? They never did. They never asked their consumer. So what happened? People went out there trying to ban Coors Light. They lost millions of dollars in sales. They lost a lot of market share. Bud Light was losing. I'm sorry. It was Coors Light that was winning. So They got terrible negativity and terrible backlash. If they only would have asked their consumers first. And that's why research is so important. And research can not necessarily be expensive. It's about leveraging and really bringing that balance of really placing your consumer at the center of everything you do, and then really bringing neuroscience to the table. Because with our proprietary AI technology, you can uncover things, but you can't just think, for example, from a Gen AI perspective, what are people feeling? What are people seeing? Because you're not going to get that information. However, based on the results of research, then you can probe. Now, from all of these findings, is this message the right one? What should be the right message? What are people telling me based on all of these insights? And then you can leverage those insights into making the right decisions. The problem is that sometimes we go with our gut and we're not really placing or exposing or asking the questions to consumers. And it's not that they get mad. Yeah. They get mad if you assume that you know what they want and what they know when you don't. ask the question. Yes, it costs money, but how much money would a Bud Light saved if they would have asked that question, right?
Well, again, I'm hearing like two or three things here that are big themes for me and just what I've realized over my career. Number one is it's probably not AI or humans.
Right.
It's both. I'm looking at that room behind you, which is one of your research labs. And the two-way mirror means we need a psychologist or a neuroscientist or a marketer watching the interview, but we also have the camera for the AI who can maybe recognize things that a human can't recognize. And so the human can put the context or the whole story or feel the emotions, but an AI could give objective feedback. When you said, like, I love this campaign, you're putting your own bias into it then. And we really need both of those to do the best thing. And if you just ask generative AI to write your campaign for you, it's not going to do the right job either. But I really wanted to highlight that last point that you were making because I think it was the best one, which is in applying AI or in doing any type of sales or marketing, I think we need to put the customer first here and say, what do they want? What type of technology would make their lives better? Not what would save us money, what would make the sale faster, what would make it more profitable, but what would a client expect or need in this situation in an ideal world? And like, what type of AI or what type of research would they appreciate and feedback would they appreciate versus what's going to be annoying, overwhelming, or we've all called the 800 number and sat on hold frustrated. Maybe we can fix some of that now. You could fix it with a human, or you could fix it with a chatbot that could give you the answers without being on hold, right?
And there's so much evolving every millisecond when it comes to AI, right? And just like you said, from a customer service standpoint, chat boxes on websites, on e-commerce, etc. And when it comes to research, I will tell you a very cool and very short example. But we have this big client, they're very large and the market leader in the category where they're at. It's in services, not in consumer packaged goods. And, they work with some of the best, if not the biggest ad agencies in the world. So they were used to doing traditional ad testing. We said, okay, here's our technology. Why don't we do a test and learn to test the advertising? And when they started seeing the results, they were actually saving so much money because they were able to get the most value by millisecond. What was that part of the commercial that people like or the storyboard? What was it about this moment? And really looking at those emotions, it helped give direction and input to the ad agency. So their creative team, their director before doing the film shoot could know these are the things that were the most important. And then they started doing it more often for other campaigns. So sometimes people think, oh, going to research, let me follow my gut. No, there are very good ways and easy ways that you can get the right information, leveraging AI for the sake of really making the right decisions when it comes to neuroscience, emotions, behavior, and level of engagement that save this company at the end of the day millions of dollars. Because if they would have gone with what they had originally, it wouldn't have been good for them. And how much time do you have to really change things before you go into production? And then you don't want to go after you're already on the air with a campaign, having to push it back and now have to edit only if you knew, right? So I think that for marketers, it's very important to have that sense of responsibility, putting their consumer or their customer at the center of everything they do. And at the same time, whether you're in sales, whether you are working in B2B, in any type of business, how do you really keep that customer centricity is crucial.
So tell me about the weights here a little bit. I'm sure you have a philosophy or strategy, and I don't need to know like the exact weights of what percentages or anything, but in general, sometimes people are more willing to share sensitive information with an AI or an anonymous survey than they are with a person-to-person interview. And other times a person-to-person interview allows them to open up and they'll share more with a human than they would in a robot or survey, especially if their boss is going to look at it or something. But when you're doing this sort of multi-dimensional research, what factors do you trust the data more than the gut more than the data? Are they all equal? How do you think about these when you're getting a lot of, measurements?
So that's an excellent question, Mike. As a matter of fact, imagine that we were doing a focus group. It could be face-to-face or it could be virtual. It could be an IDI, an individual interview. Imagine that you and I were talking about a category that it's much more personal. Let's say women's health or sanitary protection or sexual health or incontinence or perimenopause. Think about categories that
all the fun stuff
that people might feel a little bit less comfortable speaking with a broader group.
Yeah.
But whether it's with a team of other people like yourselves or just a one-on-one, the way that our technology works is you're doing the interview, you're doing the session, you're asking the right questions, you're probing the whys, and then our technology really analyzes the data by every millisecond. And it's also really looking at the combination of eye tracking, facial expressions, and the tone of voice. So that gives our algorithm an understanding of what were the sentiments, what were the feelings, and then it gives you a diagnostic. But we're not only using that, to your point, we balance the data with also other measurements, meaning from what they selected, because maybe they had, during the interview, they had to select something or rank something that for them was more important, because it helps us kind of balance the data, right, a little bit more. It helps us really put everything and see the whole picture. And what that allows us is maybe it's not that they didn't like it, or maybe it's not that they liked it a lot, but maybe there was a point, there was something there that could have been better. What is that? Where did we find that? Those are the things that we really look detail by detail, right? We don't say, oh, they liked it or they loved it for X, Y, and Z, or they hated it because X, Y, and Z. No, we go into the root of the cause, and then we extrapolate that and we inform the client so then they can make the necessary tweaks to make it better.
And you do some innovation boot camps and workshops and stuff and teach people. I would love to hear more about the content in that and all this different study and research. What have you learned, and what are people kind of most excited to learn from you?
Thank you so much for asking that. As a matter of fact, I've been a marketer for now 30 years of my career. I started very young, and I was always very inquisitive. So one of the things that we have done as a company, I have been in business for 13 years. I spent most of my career consumer packaged goods in different global roles. Then I went to e-commerce. But when I started Savvy Marketers, for me, one of the things that really fascinated me were trends. So we really focus on really looking at trends all the time, constantly, because trends are things that are shifting, that are changing. And the more you're in tune to really looking at what are those shifts, how are they happening, and why are they happening, it's going to help you decide where to focus your efforts. And that helps us guide companies, our clients. It helps us guide teams, right? So for me, learning is very important, but sharing these trends, and we customize it by client or by industry. One of the things that I'm also very fascinated is with students, right? I'm an avid learner. I love to continue to learn, right? Because I think being able to understand that you may think you know, but you don't know it all, to have that humility to keep on asking questions, to continue to evolve is absolutely crucial. And I love having interns, students, where we can also teach and show them, hey, these are new technologies, new ways where you can really look at data in real time, where you can really take human learning, machine learning, AI, but really look at everything, but really understand, like you said in the beginning, the human aspect, and really helping narrate and tell those stories. Because I can tell you a bunch of facts, Mike, right? I can say 78% of people are spending X number of seconds before making a decision, or they spend 3.5 hours on TikTok every day, more than on any other streaming device or social platform. Okay, but why? What are they looking at? right? Are they sharing it with others? How many screens are they using, right? There's so many things. What are the topics that they're mostly interested? So being able to pinpoint those things is very important, because I can tell you a lot of facts, but if I don't say it to you in a story, it's not going to resonate with you. Imagine they always say human beings have the attention span shorter than a goldfish. That speaks so much volume for me, because it shows you that people have a short attention span. So you have to give it to them in a very clear and succinct way.
Yeah.
The clearer you are, the more receptive they're going to be, and they're going to get it. So those are some of the things that I like doing when talking about trends, when teaching people either at workshops or at events, so people can, again, find better ways to communicate and articulate. And let me tell you, one thing that is very cool nowadays is, if you probe, because a lot of people are so obsessed with generative AI, and I get it. I've been obsessed with ChatGPT for over 2 years, while it was still like pilot testing, before it went huge. But let me tell you, you're going to get what you probe. So if your probing is not right, it's not well thought of, the data that you're going to get from the generative AI from a response standpoint, it's not going to be good either. So how do you also challenge yourself into, hey, I got all of these data points, but what does it mean? If you probe it in a way, you're going to get better response. So it's going to help you make better decisions.
Well, I love that too, because I think as salespeople and as marketers, or especially market researchers, I think it's more important to be able to ask a great question than it is to have a great answer.
That's
And I think we're learning that lesson again with AI, that you have to be able to ask the right prompt. You have to be able to ask a really smart question in order to get a smart answer. If you ask a dumb, broad question, you're going to get a dumb answer, right? So tell me where you think, speaking of trends, things will go in the next 3 to 5 years in marketing. What do you think marketing looks like in the near future?
Well, I can tell you that AI is going to change everything. It started, but it's still in a very infantile stage, meaning the length of how it's going to shift roles and jobs. Everyone's jobs is going to change. Everyone's, no matter if you're a creative, no matter if you're an analyst, no matter if you're in marketing, if you're in sales, right? Generative AI and AI as a whole, it's going to change everyone's jobs. So what does that mean? How do I prepare myself? That's the question that I tell others. You need to stay ahead of the curve. You need to prepare yourself to really be able to bring the value that no AI will bring, right?
Right.
One thing that I say very important is, yes, as a marketer, let's say, oh, I used to work with so many ad agencies. You see a lot of agencies merging together. That will continue. But the whole point is not agencies' survival from a merging standpoint, is how do we protect the creativity? Because when it comes to AI, and Coca-Cola, they've been using Gen AI for a lot of creatives. Let me tell you something. Whatever you create on Gen AI, there's no copyright. So whatever you generate from, let's say, DALL-E or Sora within the ChatGPT space, etc., anybody else can get. Pepsi can get, not only Coca-Cola, and others. So how do you protect your creative? That's where I feel talent. I'm sorry.
Well,
There's Picasso and there's Picasso, right?
yeah.
So I think you can probe a lot of things, but still from a creative standpoint, I think that we need to make sure that we're protecting creative, because the one thing that you want to avoid is that you come up with something that you decided to develop the logo, you decided to develop the creative using Gen AI, and then somebody else has it. And when you're trying to stop them, you can't, because there's no trademark.
Well, I see that a little bit differently, which is fine. But I think I go the other way with the execution of it. That the talent becomes more important than the intellectual property. I don't know that suing anybody over stealing your stuff was ever going to stop
Oh,
them
absolutely.
or really protect anything. It was kind of a mirage anyway. And I get on those big ones, like you're saying, if it's Coke versus Pepsi, they got millions of dollars, they got thousands of lawyers, they can fight it out. But if you're a small or medium-sized business, finding somebody that's talented that can make something good, whether they use AI or not, and they can make it again if your competitors steal it, come up with a better idea, I think that's where the magic is going forward. And like you said, what AI can't do. AI can crank out another fake image from Dolly, but can they come up with the idea for the image, or can they use it in a way that tells a story and connects with your audience to build that positive affiliation? So I think it puts the onus back on us and not on the lawyers to do something worthy of.
And I love what you just said, because as a small business owner, right, we're a full end-to-end marketing agency. So I am very protective of our creatives, not only of our team, because they're the best at what they do. So I want to make sure that people are not trying to do things that are not going to bring the knowledge, the talent, the human aspect that generative AI will never do, right? And I'm not saying that Gen AI will not continue to improve, of course, right? Because it's constantly learning. But we really need to protect talent. And I think that the more prepared we are, the more we continue to develop our talents, the better we're going to be. And that's why I was saying we need to be prepared, because yes, a lot of roles will change. How I do certain things might change. But the important thing is that I am prepared and thinking ahead.
Yeah, I love that. So thinking ahead even further now, my last question for you is, if we go like 30 years out, where do you think we end up in our society in a world with AI and stuff? I think our sci-fi movies were, a lot made in the 70s, 80s, and 90s where this wasn't a reality. And now it feels like it's going to be within our lifetimes.
Yeah.
How do you think it plays out? What movie do we end up in?
It's very interesting, because there's a lot of movies, the Terminators, right, that freak people out, or the
marketers, I think Minority Report and all the
Minority Report, exactly. So I think that there's a lot of things that predictive analytics are going to serve in AI. I am certain of that. I feel it, I see it in terms of where it's going. But the one thing that I think is also very important is, how do we interact with AI? Because here's the thing, just like our muscles, the more we exercise, the more muscle we build. The same thing happens with our brain. And what do I mean by that? If you're going to rely, I have to write an email, but I'm not going to write it. Let me just ask, ChatGPT or one of these other, because there's going to be hundreds, right? If not thousands of Gen AIs out there.
Millions, yeah.
So if instead of you thinking, you're just probing and there's no thought process, you're not putting that brain muscle to work out. And what happens, and that's my biggest worry, is I think that there's so much opportunity with AI to help us make our lives more efficient, more effective in so many ways, better manage our time, all that, avoid redundancies or duplication of efforts. But at the same time, don't forget to think. Because if you rely on the AI to do everything for you, from sending an email to writing a presentation to doing an analysis to let me code this, let me just ask Gen AI to code it for me, whatever it may be, you can ask, hey, is this the right message? Or is there a way to make it better? But you have to still put your brain to think, because if not, guess what's going to happen in 30 years from now? People in their 30s are going to have Alzheimer's. And there's going to be a lot of neurological issues, because you're not putting this incredible muscle, that brain, to work out. And we need to keep it working out.
Yeah, I've shared this a lot, but there was a research study that was done that said people are 10% dumber when their cell phone is in the room. It doesn't even have to be turned on. It could just be powered off with a dead battery in the back of the room, but your brain is outsourcing all these answers to the phone and all the work to the phone. So it's not trying to remember things that you're going to get alerts for and stuff like that. And, all of us that are old enough to remember when you used to think of an actor in a movie or something, you had to actually think of that actor and go, oh, who was that? And what was their name? And you had to work it out with your friends. And sometimes it would take hours. And then you would go, oh, Tom Cruise.
Exactly. Absolutely.
And your brain practice that muscle, like you said. And now it's like, oh, you just ask 5 seconds. Hey, who was in that movie? Up there it is. Okay. I didn't have to think about it or use my brain at all. I think the efficiency is great, but the muscle does concern me too. So what I'm hearing is somewhere between WALL-E and Idiocracy, and then Minority Report and Back to the Future too, seems to be a combination. Yeah. Hopefully we can do better than that. That's why I'm here on the podcast. And I hope we can so
too. And I think that something that is very important is to really put the right policies in place. As parents, we have a responsibility. As employers, we have responsibility. So before ChatGPT became a big thing, I had already trained my team. I told them, okay, you have to really look at this because this is the future. Then we started looking at other Gen AI solutions and platforms for communication, for marketing, for media, etc. And I said, but remember, you're here because you're an expert in your role. So you need to bring that brain muscle. You have to bring your inputs. If you want to validate anything or to search for guidance, that's a different thing. But our clients are not coming to us for us to do what they could have done. I'm sorry. Right. We're here to think, we're here to do, we're here to add value. And that's where the big difference is. And I think also as a parent, I have teenage girls, and I had to tell them about ChatGPT and Gen AI. And they know, that's not allowed in their schools. They know that, it's not, oh, let me take this easy pass because there's an easier way. No, this is the time now more than ever that we need to teach our children to really focus on listening, on studying, on reading and learning. Because once they got that phone, that their attention span, and they're always, looking at videos very short. Because
unless we change something, it's going to start going down. Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's a great message to end on. So I'll just ask you, if people are interested in savvy marketers, they can go to savvy-marketers.com, and you can connect with Alexandra Gonzalez on LinkedIn and stuff there too. But how can you help us, or how can we help you, Alexandra?
No, I thank you so much for the time. I think that whatever we can help others on how to, first seeing the value of AI used right from a neuroscience standpoint, I think it's very important. And also making sure that people are preparing themselves for the future, right? Because there's a lot of uncertainty, right? And people then look out, oh, how could this have happened in the election? Or how could this be happening here? How could it? Again, because they're not asking the right questions, right? They're not really placing their consumers at the center of everything they do. And I think that we are all brands. We're all human beings. We're all consumers and customers. So it is important to also think in ways, hey, how can we bring more value to the table? And that's what I try to teach and instilling others, not only on with my team, but also with our clients and whoever may be interested in learning how to really focus on a more innovative approach to market research. Being innovative or using an innovative approach doesn't mean more expensive. So feel free to reach out to us. We are more than delighted to show you how the technology works, show you case studies and best practices, and take it from there.
I love it. Again, savvy-marketers.com is the website. Alexandra Gonzalez, thank you for being on the show. And as soon as we hit stop record, I'm going to ask you why you think the market research on those polls were so off in 2016 and 2024. But anybody else can reach out to you on LinkedIn and ask as well. If you're looking for human first AI marketing that puts your customer first, your employees first, and your connection to your clients and audience, then contact me at avenue9.com. We can talk about a community engagement program with some high volume content marketing with AI. Until next time, go play with it, have fun, and good luck, everybody.